Good morning or good afternoon, whatever time you're viewing this recording. My name is John Egan. I used to work at the University of Auckland. I've now relocated to Ireland and looking for a job. Have you got a job for me? Anyway, I committed to Jackie and to the group that I would give this presentation, but since I can't present at 3 o'clock in the morning on Irish time, instead I'm sending this recording. And this is talking about how you use feedback templates in PebblePad to approximate what we might use a rubric for in other platforms such as the learning management system. So I'm going to talk a bit about why rubrics are used at all, which might be old news for everyone here because you're all so experienced. Talk about PebblePad feedback templates and how they work. Show two examples on how you create different feedback templates for the same assignment. And then I'll show very quickly the staff workflow and the student workflow, and then finally the feedback workflow once you want to use the actual template and give feedback to students. So why rubrics? Well, first and foremost, using a rubric can remove ambiguity from the feedback and grade calculation process. It delineates specifically the performance indicators and the criterion against these, and then it therefore forces academics to develop a very much more precise way of summatively assessing student work. Now, a lot of my colleagues initially, when I proposed that to them, they're aghast because they like the kind of intuitive approach to feedback and assessment, let's just say. But I actually think that delineating precision actually reflects well, particularly since I'm working in a context, usually it's a professional program, either health or education. And we say precision is really important. This also, therefore, the rubrics also allow you to feedback very quickly to students. It makes marking much more efficiently in your time because you can very quickly read an assignment or view an assignment if it's a media type thing and say that this level they're performing for this criterion and for this one and this one. It also then, another benefit of rubrics are if they're well designed and they're used in diverse ways across a course or program, it inculcates in students the ability to develop a nuanced sense of how work is assessed, and particularly how the caliber of work is important in terms of assessment. So PebblePad feedback templates, there are a range of question and feedback types. It's a template in PebblePad, therefore. You can use Likert scales, radio buttons, binaries. You can do a mix of qualitative and quantitative feedback. And you can also use it to, you can create either a feedback template that's for a specific assignment or assessment, and you can also have more generic ones that you can use across assessments. So it's very flexible. It's as flexible as you need it to be. But you should be aware that if you're using a feedback template in PebblePad, the feedback does not pass back to your LMS. If there's a grade, the grade will pass back as a percentage, but feedback actually lives only in PebblePad and Atlas, and that's one of the trade-offs. Now, if you're primarily or largely using PebblePad, that's great because students are used to working in that space and so are staff, and so it becomes part of the ecosystem of learning. But for example, if you're only using PebblePad for one assessment point in a semester, you have to be super, super careful that you socialize to students that they need to get their feedback out of PebblePad. They won't get it out of your LMS or via email. The big limitations that I struggle with, but it's on the list apparently of future development, is that feedback templates currently do not calculate scores or grades, even when there are points allocated within a feedback template. And therefore, the grade is always done as a separate entry, and they always go as a percentage, and they do not pass back to the gradebook of the LMS. Sorry, they do pass back to the gradebook of the LMS. But anything that's in terms of the template that you're using, even if it nominally looks like it's calculating a score, none of those numbers pass back to the LMS. So I'm going to show you two different options for the same assignment. They're both derived from the assessment criteria and the performance indicators for the assignment. One uses a feedback template using a rubric table. Another uses a feedback template using a mix of question types. But there are obviously more choices than these. I just want to give two to give you a quick overview. So let's switch over to. So here is the table-based one. I'll start there. Oh, sorry, here's the regular one. So here's the one that's done based on using a feedback template that has a assessment rubric in it. There's a space to give this, save actually this piece of feedback with an identifier, which is what you need to do when you're actually deploying it in the LMS environment. And then what I've done is I've taken the criteria now. the criterion down the left side here, you'll see that the first one is ostensibly worth 2 points. The next one's worth 5 points. The next one is worth 3 points. The final one is also worth 5 points. So one of the limitations of using a rubric table block is that you have to have the same number of columns, regardless of the number that you want to use in the criteria. So there's no way for me to make this first one just worth 2 of these things and then to enter the points accordingly. So what I need to do is just leave it as this, and I zeroed out all the point values. And then at the end there, I put a question for overall feedback. The other one I've delivered is one that uses different question formats within there. And so I've, instead of taking the into a table, I've taken the first criteria there as a question that's Likert scaled. By the way, I think it's super important to include a 0 in your Likert scales when you're assessing student works in case they missed an element of an assignment or in case they haven't submitted it at all. So you can say, nope, 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 nothing submitted. This one uses a different scale. So I've got 5 numbers there. Overall caliber of work, I've got 3 there. And then next steps, reflection over there. And finally, overview of feedback, right? So that's pretty cool, right? So here's what the student does. The student completes their work in their workbook. They submit it to Atlas, to the workspace for their course or program, and then to the specific assignment. The assignment is set up to use versioning, so that means students can continue working in their portfolio while they're being assessed. And it's also set up to use very specific feedback templates. So let's take a look at that. So I've got myself logged in my demo student here. So here's the student's portfolio. And we are going to do the summary reflection, which I'm a good student, so I've already done, and I'm just ready now to submit it. So I'm going to share to Atlas, to a workspace, and to the assignment that's called synthesis reflection. And I agree to this, and I share the asset. And now I go on and continue what I'm doing as a student. Let's get that open a sec for. For the feedback workflow, as a staff person, I'm going to go into the assignment queue. I'm going to click into a submission. So I'm going to go into the assignment queue. I'm going to click into a submission. I'm going to click the specific page of the workbook, select the feedback template I want to use and complete it. I'm going to add a grade if I want to, and then I'm going to save and hold. And the reason I do save and hold is, I don't know about you, but when I have a larger class, if I start releasing feedback and I have a whole bunch of papers to mark, I'm still trying to get through the rest of the papers, and I'm starting to get queries from students about their grades of the feedback. As well, I actually am a big believer in what's called the cookie principle. Whenever I have a large number of students work to assess, after the going through all of them, I always go back to the beginning ones and make sure if I've maybe been a little too harsh with them or too easy, or maybe I should have, as I sometimes tell myself, maybe I should have had a cookie before I started to make sure I wasn't had my crabby pants on. Okay, so let's show you what this looks like as a staff person. So I go into my workspace and I'm into my submissions, and I'll go to my synthesis reflection. And there's the submission. All I do is click on it. And I know that this is the summary reflection, so I'll go to the summary reflection page. And there's the student work. Now I can go up here and I want to add feedback. And so I'm going to use the feedback template. So if I use the table one, I can say, this is great. This is good. This is great. Overall, great. Obviously, I would normally put more feedback on there. And I'm going to make sure I tick save on this page, and then I'm going to save and hold. Now let's look at what it would look like if I did the other feedback template. So I'll go to the synthesis reflection final rubric. I'm going to save this in the page as well. Egan more feedback. And I really quite like this one because I can see right when I do this what points they're going to be allocated for the assignment. So I can see very quickly, and some nice feedback there, is they've lost a point on the reflection and they've lost a point in the overall caliber of work, but otherwise they've got full marks. So that's 13 out of 15. Very easy for me to note that. I convert that to a percentage, and I'll do this as save as hold. And then if I needed to do a grade, I would simply do, well, what's 13 out of 15? Or what's 6 out of 15? Let's say it's about 91. The wrong window. There we go. 91. I'm going to save and hold again. Okay. Now, this assignment is not linked to a Canvas site, but if it was, when I release all these grades, then it would actually all go back to there. So I'm going to close this, and I'm going to close that. Now I'm going to go back to tip this, and at the bottom here, you now see Manage Feedback appears. So I go Manage Feedback, and I'm going to go for Release. Now, any type of feedback that you provided here will tell you. So it shows that I did a grade on one submission, and I've got 2 different pieces of comments. Comments also includes using a feedback template. I haven't used the other things. I haven't used some of these things at all. And I go release the feedback, and now all of the students will be notified to go back into Atlas and get their grades. So their feedbacks. Let's go back in here as the student. And I'm going to go back into my portfolio. I come on here, and let's look at the ones that I did today since the 30th. So here's the template that shows them the one I did secondary. Go back. Here's what the table looks like. And another student can harass me if they want to harass me about their grade or anything. Okay. So the last thing I want to show you is how you set up the workspace for using what you want to do here. So if you've got, you're in your workspace and you want to manage feedback, you go into the feedback setting here and you go Feedback Templates. And when you want to add one, you simply add a template from your resources. And you select the item, and it gives you some options. So the first one is, do you want it available for all assignments? If you're using a generic feedback template, you would say yes. In this case, I'm going to say no. And let's say I want this for assignment number 1 only, and then I save. That means when anyone is assessing assignment number 1 and they look for a feedback template, the only one they're going to see is this one that I've just added. When you're doing the summary one, you're only going to see the 2 that I just added. I generally have 1 for each assignment that I use, and then there's no ambiguity. So when I'm in a particular assignment marking queue, I only have the option to use the feedback template that I'm supposed to for that assignment, which makes it much more straightforward. So I think that was everything. It is the end. So obviously I can't be there to answer questions because I'm sleeping, but I'm certainly happy that if Jackie gathers those questions and sends me an email to reply to you all asynchronously. All right. Ciao.